Can you imagine being a chef on a $13 billion nuclear-powered submarine? These people don't have it easy, that's for sure. You've got to consider safety, efficiency, and creativity with zero margin for error. So let's take a look at cooking on a submarine. Galleys are far from any conventional cooking stations. First, they're smaller than an average person's bedroom, roughly about 10 feet by 14 feet. Just imagine being able to cram in all the equipment and supplies you need into that tiny of a space and still have a stellar chef who can make some awesome meals for an amazing crew, all with the zero margin for error. It's pretty intense. Now here's the thing about a galley. It might seem really super small, but it runs like clockwork. There's nothing gas-powered, nothing with an open flame underneath it. The galley chefs know that in below-sea operations, those things are a disaster waiting to happen. So to get around that, what do they use? Electric-powered cooking aids, industrial convection ovens, induction cookers, and pressure-controlled deep fryers. All of which help to tackle the unique challenges of undersea culinary arts. So a lot of people might think it's just basic chow, but it really is an art form from start to finish. Speaking of chow, let's break it down. When you're hundreds of feet underwater, it's not like you can just pop out to a grocery store. Just imagine feeding about 130 sailors for several months. Now that's the arts of logistics. Space on board submarines is used to its max, and in this case, storage is given a lot of thought as well. Just imagine a place where food's not simply thrown around in the pantry. Every single item on the sub is completely thought out. Storage units are stuffed into every corner and nook, from hidden compartments under seats to space behind pipes. It's kind of like Tetris gone nuclear. Now I know what you're thinking. What keeps everything fresh? Well, they've got high-tech, temperature-controlled units that are used to maintain optimum conditions for everything from fresh produce all the way to frozen meats. Everything is also monitored with sensors 24/7 to make sure the temperature and humidity conditions stay perfect. Oh, and then you've got all the pre-cooked stuff. There's all this cool technology that stores food from weeks to months, maintaining the integrity of all of its nutrients. Fresh produce is slowly put into special cooling units to stretch its longevity, while flash frozen material retains all the nutrients due to meticulous temperature controls. Oh, and backup systems switch on when anything fails, and that's the redundancy involved, but in the best way possible. Now for the absolute behind-the-scenes magic, the planning in terms of food. Cooking for a crew of people in a confined space requires some really strict adherence to standards. Therefore, teams of naval cooks engage in ever-rotating menus that change every 21 days or so. They use a rotating menu to prevent the food from seeming predictable. But there's also more to it. Each meal is a calculation in terms of nutrition, in terms of taste, and in terms of efficient preparation. They're making use of the ingredients that have been prepped, stored, and otherwise intended to last for extended tours. Proper dietary planning of the meal has to be followed to ensure that each dish provides an exact type or quantity of nutrition based on the stress of working in the deep sea environment. Not only are these meals good for the sailors, but they're also a work of art. With everything from filling stews to foreign goods that make you forget you're inside a steel tube underwater, the culinary department takes pride in combining comfort food with global flavors. Here's where the Navy chefs really start to shine. They prepare food to inspire and satisfy the crew while keeping them operationally ready. It's not easy being on a submarine. The unceasing motion, the months of working hours, and the isolation do take their toll on the mind and the body. Thus, the importance of food becomes second to none. It also boosts morale as well as nutritional levels. Sometimes, special occasion-themed dinners are set in place, conjuring up memories of holiday dinners or birthday bashes, often with incredibly limited raw materials. But somehow, these expert chefs always manage. They take preserved foodstuffs and work recipes to create an atmosphere where the crew can feel a little bit more at home. The galley is, by no sense of the word, an ultimate commercial kitchen, but it does fill bellies with food. It's also a place for bonding. Communal meals are one of the rare occasions when the crew can bond. When living in such close quarters, this makes the galley space all the more important. The mess deck, where meals are served, is where sailors come, swap sea stories, and maybe even begin friendships over a hot plate of food. An oasis in the otherwise non-stop submarine working schedule. On a normal day for the rest of us civvies, Cramped quarters make cooking unpleasant, but on a submarine, it's completely unforgiving. There's hardly room to stir with a spoon, let alone bust a move throughout the galley. Everything is done with steely precision. When you take into account the fact that submarines always in motion, it means prepping a really good meal is kind of like an Olympic sport in its own right. This is where training comes into play. Navy cooks learn to coexist with cooking. After completing the basic military culinary school training, these chefs learn for another 18 months. Part of that is learning to deal with all the problems that a submarine can pose. The cramped quarters, equipment that has to be secured, and emergency plans that might be involved while prepping dinner. These chefs make sure the whole food preparation process is performed safely, competently, and without a hitch. But how exactly do they get supplies on board when the submarine is several hundred feet below the surface? Well, they do that through highly secretive resupply operations. Here's the thing, a submarine can technically pull into port like any surface vessel, but if it did that, then it would lose the element of surprise and its strategic relevance. So how exactly do they get their food and supplies while remaining undetected? This is where vertical replenishment comes into play. It's a resupply system that's equally high-tech and stealthy. Specialized support vessels will come near the submarine during these brief surfacing operations, delivering important supplies with surgical precision. Even while remaining mostly submerged, transfers can occur via missile tubes or specialized hatches. It's an operation requiring highly synchronized teamwork that guarantees the crew gets what they need in total darkness and silence. It's about more than delivering food. It's about ensuring the entire mission is on course within the operational capability of the submarine while keeping it well fed and happy. Being on board a submarine for an extended period of time, there's no easy way to dispose of garbage and trash, so waste disposal is something that's very carefully monitored. Each meal is measured to keep leftovers to a minimum, and there are special systems in place for gathering the food waste, which then gets compacted and stored for offloading later in port or during a resupply. Even used cooking oil is collected in such a manner as to comply with environmental standards. We're talking zero waste in a place where anything has to be as efficient and effective as humanly possible. In the grand scheme of things, Navy chefs don't get enough credit. And yet, without them, a submariner's mission would be that much harder. They do way more than provide meals. They're the backbones of crew morale. Their physical readiness and the overall success of every mission really does depend on a good meal. Within a confined, high-pressure setting, these chefs transform limited resources into meals that often work miracles. In other words, the next time you're wondering what's for dinner, just remember, there are people in far less comfortable environments doing that and under dire circumstances, with accuracy to a split second. But somehow they make it happen. So how would you feel if you had to prep a meal for 130 sailors while you were underwater in a submarine?